Ambassador Eleanor Reeves felt small in the vast chamber of the Galactic Council. The circular room stretched hundreds of meters across with tiered seating rising like a massive amphitheater. Representatives from over 500 species filled the seats, their forms ranging from crystalline entities to gaseous clouds contained in specialized suits. The air hummed with translation devices as thousands of languages were converted into a common format that all could understand. Eleanor stood on the central platform, a solitary human figure bathed in harsh white light. High above, the council's 7 elders watched from their elevated positions, their ancient faces showing nothing but cold judgment. Species designation, human. Planet of origin, Earth. Galactic classification, emerging civilization. Category 3, announced First Elder Drav, his voice booming through the chamber. You stand before this council to answer for your kind's actions. Eleanor straightened her diplomatic uniform, her expression remaining calm despite the hostile atmosphere. Behind her stood 2 human guards, ceremonial in function but providing a small comfort in this alien environment. The charges against humanity are grave, continued Drav, his 8 eyes blinking in sequence. Unauthorized expansion beyond your designated development zone. Unlicensed technological advancement. Unsanctioned communication with restricted species. Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. Some clicked mandibles in disapproval. Others released pheromones of disgust that their environmental systems quickly filtered. These accusations are surprising to hear, Eleanor replied, her voice clear and unwavering. Humanity has operated within the framework of the initial contact protocols, signed 80 years ago when your scouts first discovered Earth, protocols which your species has systematically undermined, countered Second Elder Mithran, a being composed of interconnected light strands. We have evidence of human vessels in the Proxima Centauri system, an area explicitly forbidden to your kind. Eleanor nodded. We maintain a research station there with documentation filed with your science directorate. Filed and denied, Mithran shot back. Yet the station was constructed regardless. The display screen surrounding the chamber flickered to life, showing images of human outposts across dozens of star systems, each highlighted in red to indicate their supposedly illegal status. The council has existed for 26,000 years, said Third Elder Vextar, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light. We have guided thousands of species through their development, ensuring galactic stability. Your kind has been known to us for less than a century, yet you presume to ignore our wisdom. Eleanor took a deep breath. This was proceeding exactly as Earth's Strategic Council had predicted. The diplomatic mission was a pretense. The decision had already been made. Perhaps the honorable elders might specify which regulation prohibits establishing a research outpost after initial application, she asked. Our legal experts found no such provision in the contact protocols. A moment of silence fell across the chamber. Eleanor knew why. There was no such prohibition, merely an expectation of compliance that humanity had technically sidestepped. Your species' propensity for finding loopholes is precisely what concerns this council, Fourth Elder Zol remarked, his gelatinous form pulsing with irritation. In 80 years, your technological advancement has proceeded at 16 times the standard rate. Your population has expanded to 11 colony worlds despite guidelines suggesting a maximum of 3 for your development stage. Eleanor gestured to the data displays. And yet we've maintained perfect ecological balances on all worlds, developed non-invasive relationships with indigenous life, and created self-sustaining colonies that require no resource extraction beyond their local systems. The method is not in question, Fifth Elder Urfax said, metal plates sliding across her mechanical body. It is the rate and the deliberate circumvention of council oversight. The chamber grew quieter as a figure moved toward Eleanor from the side entrance. The human guards tensed but remained in position. If I may address the council, said the newcomer, a tall human man with gray at his temples. You are not recognized, Drav stated flatly. Director Marcus Wright, Earth Defense Intelligence, the man continued as if he hadn't heard. I believe my credentials were submitted alongside the ambassadors. Your presence was acknowledged. Your right to speak was not granted, Vextar said coldly. Marcus smiled slightly. Then consider this an object demonstration of human unpredictability. The comment sent a visible wave of discomfort through the assembled representatives. If there was one thing the Galactic Council despised, it was unpredictability. The Council has already made its determination, Marcus stated, moving to stand beside Eleanor. This hearing is theater, nothing more. Director, Eleanor cautioned quietly. They've amassed a fleet at the edge of our detection range, Marcus continued, his voice now carrying throughout the chamber. 87 capital ships, support vessels, what appears to be 3 planet-cracker weapons, all while inviting us here under diplomatic protection. Shocked whispers erupted across the chamber, not at the accusation, Eleanor noted, but at the fact that humans had detected the fleet. These are routine exercises, Drav said dismissively. Marcus activated a small device. The chamber's displays flickered, then changed to show tactical readouts of the Council fleet, including classified vessel designations and deployment orders explicitly mentioning Earth. Interesting exercises, Marcus remarked. Especially the parts about establishing a quarantine zone around Sol system and the species containment protocols. Sixth Elder Kala rose from her seat, feathered crest expanding in anger. This is a violation of Council security. How did you access these files? Eleanor stepped forward. The point isn't how we accessed them, Elder. The point is why they exist at all. Your fleet was dispatched weeks before this hearing was even scheduled. The documents appeared genuine, murmured representatives from several species, their own data systems confirming what they were seeing. Humanity has prepared for this moment since we first detected your observation vessels in our system. Decades before official contact, Eleanor continued, we knew that any species advancing as quickly as ours would be seen as a threat to your ordered galaxy. You misunderstand our intentions, Seventh Elder Thrick said, speaking for the first time. The Council ensures peace across thousands of worlds. Species that advance too rapidly historically bring chaos and suffering. Or change, Marcus countered. We've studied your histories. Every species that has risen quickly has been systematically hampered or eliminated. You don't protect the galaxy from chaos. You protect your power from challenge. The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. You overreach, human, Drav said, his voice dangerous. No, Eleanor replied calmly. We see clearly. She turned to address the gathered representatives rather than the elders. The Council speaks of guidance while practicing control. They speak of peace while preparing for war. The chamber erupted in voices, some defensive, others questioning. Eleanor noticed representatives from newer Council species exchanging concerned looks. Enough, Drav shouted, pounding a gnarled appendage against his podium. This Council has tolerated human impudence long enough. You have revealed your true nature, a species too dangerous and unpredictable to be allowed free development. Then we can dispense with the pretense, Eleanor said. You've already decided on war. Not war, Vextar corrected coldly. Containment, supervision. Your colonies will be placed under direct Council administration. Your technology will be restricted to approved levels. Your military capabilities will be dismantled. And if we refuse, Marcus asked. Then the full might of the Galactic Council will ensure compliance, Drav stated. The fleet you somehow detected is but a fraction of our strength. Eleanor looked at Marcus, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The Galactic Council hereby declares humanity in violation of galactic law and cosmic order, Drav pronounced formally. You have 7 planetary rotations to begin disarmament procedures or face immediate enforcement action. Eleanor bowed her head in mock deference. We understand. As alarms suddenly blared throughout the station, Marcus spoke quietly into his communicator. Activate Protocol Omega. Across Council space, thousands of seemingly dormant human devices simultaneously activated. The war had begun, but humanity was far from unprepared. Admiral Thomas Rivera stood motionless before the massive viewing window on the bridge of the ESS Indomitable. His weathered face reflected in the transparent material as he watched the first wave of the Galactic Council's armada emerge from hyperspace. Massive ships, each one dwarfing humanity's largest vessels, appeared one after another until 83 capital ships hung in the void, their weapon systems glowing with charged energy. They brought the 7th Fleet, Commander Lily Ochoa said quietly as she approached her superior. The tactical officer's dark eyes scanned the holographic display floating between them. That's nearly a quarter of their total naval strength. And yet still underestimating us, Tomas replied, his voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who had planned for this moment for years. He tapped the communication panel on his wrist. All hands to battle stations. Operation Trojan begins now. Throughout the massive human flagship, crew members moved with practiced efficiency. Unlike the Council ships with their hierarchical command structures, human vessels operated on a distributed authority system, each section capable of functioning independently if needed. The Council had expected humanity's fleet to be gathered at Earth, preparing a desperate defense of their homeworld. Instead, the human warships were scattered strategically across dozens of seemingly abandoned mining outposts and research stations throughout the Orion Arm. On the main view screen, Council ships began launching fighters as they approached Earth's orbital defense grid. The smaller vessels moved in perfect formation, a testament to their thousands of years of military doctrine. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Communications Officer David Park announced from his station. Standard ultimatum, surrender or be destroyed. No response, Thomas ordered, his eyes never leaving the approaching fleet. Let them come closer. The Council fleet advanced confidently toward Earth, their sensors detecting only minimal defensive capabilities. What they failed to detect was the true nature of humanity's preparation for this conflict. For decades, humanity had been developing technology specifically designed to be invisible to Council scanning methods. They're within the perimeter, Lily announced, monitoring the tactical display. Defense grid ready, Thomas took a deep breath. Activate quantum mesh. Across the Sol system, thousands of microsatellites simultaneously powered up, creating an interlocking web of energy that completely surrounded the Council fleet. Not a weapon, a trap. Mesh stable, David reported, his fingers dancing across his control panel. Council ships attempting to reverse course. Too late, Thomas said, a grim satisfaction in his voice. Engage Phase 2. Throughout the Council fleet, seemingly harmless human technology, communication relays, trade beacons, even diplomatic gifts presented over years of contact, suddenly activated, revealing themselves as infiltration nodes. These devices didn't attack. They simply bypassed security, accessed ship systems, and shut them down one by one. On the flagship of the Council fleet, the massive dreadnought Eternal Vigilance, Supreme Commander Zaltor watched in horror as his ship's systems went dark section by section. Emergency lighting cast an eerie glow across the command center as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. Impossible, he whispered, his forearms gripping his command station for support. We inspected everything. Every human device was cleared by our security protocols. His aide, a younger member of his species with still developing facial tentacles, trembled visibly as he handed Zaltor a backup communication device. Incoming transmission from the humans, Supreme Commander. Admiral Rivera's face appeared on the small screen. His expression showed neither triumph nor anger, only the focused determination of someone executing a long-planned operation. Your fleet is disabled but unharmed, Thomas stated simply. Your crews are safe. This is a demonstration, not a massacre. This is against all conventions of warfare, Zaltor protested, his facial tentacles writhing in agitation. You cannot simply disable an enemy fleet without proper battle. Indeed, Thomas agreed, his tone almost conversational. Just as your planned orbital bombardment of our civilian centers was against convention. We've accessed your battle plans, Commander. Zaltor's yellow eyes widened. How did you? The same way we've been monitoring all Council communications regarding Earth for the past 30 years, Thomas interrupted. You underestimated us from the beginning. That was your first mistake. Back on the Indomitable, Thomas closed the channel and addressed his crew. Phase 1 complete. According to intelligence, Council reinforcements will arrive in 48 hours. Commander Ochoa studied the tactical display, her expression troubled. Sir, they'll send everything they have now. The Council cannot afford to appear weak before its subject worlds. I'm counting on it, Tomas replied, studying the spread of disabled Council vessels now floating harmlessly in Earth's orbit. While they focus all their military might on us, our real offensive begins. Throughout Council space, human sleeper agents, both actual humans living on Council worlds and aliens sympathetic to Earth's cause, received encrypted activation codes. These weren't soldiers or saboteurs in the traditional sense. They were information specialists, political activists, and cultural influencers who had spent years integrating into Council society. On the Council homeworld of Axis Prime, information specialist James Kovac accessed the Central Archives, releasing classified historical records showing how the Council had systematically suppressed technological development among dozens of species. On the trading hub world of Nexus Station, cultural ambassador Mei Lin organized a public forum, supposedly discussing human art but actually demonstrating how Council restrictions had stunted creative and intellectual growth across the galaxy, 57 worlds simultaneously. The truth about Council rule began to spread. In a secure compartment beneath the main bridge of the Indomitable, Thomas met with his senior officers. The room was shielded against all known forms of surveillance, with quantum encryption protecting their discussion. "The disabled fleet is secure," reported Security Chief Victor Nazarian, his scars from the early border skirmishes with Council forces visible on his dark skin. "We've established containment fields around each vessel and evacuated their crews to the habitation spheres." "Casualties?" Thomas asked. "Minimal. 7 Council troops who resisted evacuation were stunned. No fatalities on either side." Thomas nodded with satisfaction. "That's crucial. We're not fighting this war to destroy the Council species. We're fighting to break their system." Strategic Officer Nadia Ellis activated the central holographic display, showing real-time updates from across Council space. "Our information campaign is having the desired effect. Already protests have broken out on 12 worlds. 3 system governors have publicly questioned the Council's decision to attack Earth." "What about Council reinforcements?" Thomas asked. "They've mobilized their reserve fleets," Nadia confirmed. 317 capital ships are converging on Earth from all sectors. They'll arrive scattered over the next 2 to 3 days, with the main force coming in approximately 44 hours. Commander Ochoa looked concerned. "Sir, even with our technological advantages, we can't possibly handle that many ships with the same approach. The quantum mesh requires too much energy to expand beyond the current containment area." "We don't need to," Thomas replied calmly. "The first fleet was a demonstration. The coming fleets will face a different strategy altogether." He turned to Communications Officer Park. "Prepare a transmission to Earth Defense Command. Tell them to proceed with the next phase of Operation Trojan." As the officers dispersed to their duties, Lily remained behind with the Admiral. They had served together for 15 years, since the first detection of Council surveillance ships in Earth's outer system. "You knew they would do this," she said quietly. "All those years of appearing to comply with their restrictions while actually preparing for war." Thomas gazed at the tactical display showing the disabled Council ships. "The Council has existed for thousands of years, Lily. In all that time, they've developed patterns, predictable responses to what they perceive as threats to their order. And humanity threatened that order simply by existing," she concluded. "By existing and advancing," he corrected. "Their entire system depends on controlled development, limited technology, and centralized authority. We represented something they couldn't control, a species that developed faster than their system could absorb." Outside the viewport, Earth rotated serenely, seemingly oblivious to the conflict unfolding in its orbit. But across the planet's surface, defense systems were activating, and civilian populations were being moved to secure locations, not in panic, but as part of a plan decades in the making. The Council thought they were declaring war on a single upstart species. They never imagined they were walking into a carefully orchestrated trap that would challenge not just humanity's position in the galaxy, but the entire foundation of Council rule. As the next wave of Council ships prepared to depart their staging areas, a different kind of battle was already being won, not with weapons but with truth. Dr. Naomi Khatri pulled her hood lower over her face as she moved through the crowded marketplace level of Nexus Station, the massive space habitat that served as the crossroads of Council space. Around her, members of dozens of alien species conducted business, their voices creating a cacophony of sounds that the station's translation system struggled to process. Holographic advertisements floated overhead, promoting Council-approved products and services while surveillance drones drifted through the crowds. None of the busy shoppers and traders noticed the human woman slipping through their midst. In the 3 days since the Council's declaration against Earth, anti-human sentiment had been carefully cultivated through official propaganda. Images of disabled Council ships, presented as destroyed rather than merely incapacitated, played on public screens, accompanied by warnings about dangerous human aggression. Professor Khatri, a voice hissed from a shadowy alcove between two busy shops. Quickly! Naomi recognized the voice and followed the figure, Thelvar, a member of the Medusan Conclave, one of the supposedly loyal servant races of the Council. His tentacled face was hidden beneath a breather, hood that his species typically used on stations with atmospheric compositions different from their homeworld. The Council security forces are sweeping the station for humans, he whispered, leading her through a maintenance corridor where the lighting flickered intermittently. They've already detained 17 of your people. Then our timeline accelerates, Naomi replied, her voice calm despite the danger. Is everyone assembled? Yes, though some had doubts after the Council's propaganda broadcasts. The images of destroyed Council ships were quite convincing. Fabricated, Naomi said firmly. No Council vessel has been destroyed. Their crews are safe in containment habitats. This is precisely why this meeting is so important. They arrived at a sealed chamber deep in the maintenance levels of the station, where environmental systems hummed and massive power conduits transferred energy throughout Nexus. Thelvar placed his three-fingered hand against a scanner, and the door slid open to reveal a large room filled with representatives from 26 different species. The assembled beings fell silent as Naomi entered. Some looked at her with open hostility, others with curiosity or caution. All of them belonged to civilizations that had been subjugated or controlled by the Galactic Council in some form. The humans attacked unprovoked, exclaimed Dral, a furred being from a mining world in the outer systems. His species had been designated as labor specialists by the Council centuries ago. The broadcasts show their ships firing on Council peacekeepers. Naomi stepped to the center of the room and activated her holographic projector. Those images were fabricated. Here is the reality. The display showed the truth. Council ships disabled but unharmed. Crews evacuated safely to habitation spheres where they were provided with appropriate environments and nutrition for their species. Humanity could have destroyed that fleet, she explained, her voice carrying clearly to all corners of the room. Instead, we demonstrated restraint. This conflict isn't about destruction, it's about liberation. But the Council has ruled for millennia, said Ixalara, a silicon-based lifeform whose crystalline body refracted the light from the hologram. They maintain stability across thousands of worlds. Stability? Naomi challenged. Or stagnation? Every one of your species has been deliberately held back. Technologies restricted, populations controlled. Resources extracted for the benefit of the Council's founding races. She adjusted the display to show historical data, centuries, of evidence that the Human Intelligence Service had quietly gathered since first contact. The information revealed how the Council had systematically suppressed advancement among lesser species, categorizing each new civilization they encountered according to their potential usefulness, rather than recognizing their sovereignty. The Council feared your potential, just as they fear ours, Naomi continued, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. But humanity has secretly prepared for this moment since we first discovered their true nature. Thelvar stepped forward, his tentacles rippling with emotion. My people were once scientists and philosophers. Our ancient texts speak of a time when we explored the stars freely. Now we process data and maintain council ships. The humans offer us partnership, not subjugation. Murmurs spread through the gathered representatives as they considered his words. Naomi revealed the final piece. Detailed plans for a new interstellar alliance, one built on cooperation rather than dominance. The hologram showed a galactic map highlighting resource distribution, technological sharing protocols, and mutual defense agreements. The Council has mobilized everything against Earth, she explained, pointing to the movement of fleet assets across the map. Every available ship, leaving their subject worlds with minimal protection. Their power depends on their subject worlds, worlds that you represent. Understanding dawned across alien faces. You want us to rebel, Dral realized, his fur bristling with excitement, while their forces are concentrated on Earth. The Council calls itself the pinnacle of civilization, while treating most sentient beings as resources, Naomi said. We're offering a choice, continue under their rule or join us in creating something better. One by one, the representatives signaled their agreement. Centuries of resentment crystallized into resolve. A tall avian being named Kortok raised a talon. I represent 16 mining colonies in the Cygnus sector. Our workers will support this alliance, but how can we defend ourselves when the Council realizes what's happening? We have no military. You don't need one, Naomi replied. For decades, human traders and diplomats have been placing defensive systems on worlds throughout Council space. Systems designed to remain dormant until activated by authorized users. She handed out small encrypted devices to each representative. These will activate defensive shields around your critical infrastructure. Not weapons, protection. Enough to hold out until support arrives. As the representatives dispersed to contact their homeworlds, Thelvar approached Naomi. The Council believes they're fighting one species, he observed, his voice containing both hope and fear. They don't realize they're fighting their own empire. Naomi checked her quantum communicator, receiving confirmation that similar meetings were occurring throughout Council space. From the frontier worlds to the central systems, seeds of rebellion that humanity had carefully planted for decades were beginning to sprout. Phase 3 complete. She reported to Earth Command via a secure quantum channel that Council technology couldn't detect. The revolution begins in 24 hours. Across the galaxy, as the Council focused its military might on crushing humanity, the foundation of their power began to crumble from within. Back on the Nexus Station's main concourse, Council security forces marched in formation, their weapons prominently displayed as they searched for human agents. Above them, on the massive screens that dominated the central plaza, the Council's sixth elder, Kala, delivered an impassioned speech about human treachery and the Council's imminent victory. For 26,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace among the stars, her amplified voice declared. This human insurgency is but a moment in our eternal vigilance. Their defeat is certain, their punishment assured. As the crowds watched the propaganda broadcast, few noticed the subtle changes already occurring throughout the station. Maintenance workers, members of species long deemed suitable only for menial tasks, exchanged knowing glances. Communications technicians from worlds categorized as technically capable but politically unreliable made small adjustments to station systems. In her private quarters, Naomi prepared for extraction. Her mission on Nexus was complete, but she had one final task before departing. She accessed the station's central communication hub, using credentials provided by sympathetic staff. With a few commands, she bypassed the propaganda feeds and replaced them with the truth. Unedited footage showing the careful, non-lethal disabling of Council ships, alongside historical records revealing centuries of Council manipulation and control. Alarms blared as the unauthorized broadcast spread across not just Nexus, but dozens of major stations and worlds connected to its communication network. Security forces rushed to contain the information breach, but they were too late. The carefully constructed narrative was already unraveling. As Naomi boarded the small, stealth-equipped transport that would carry her from Nexus, she looked back at the massive station. For centuries it had stood as a symbol of Council authority, a gleaming monument to their supposed benevolence and order. Now it represented something else, the beginning of change. Her pilot, a former Council fighter ace who had defected to Earth years earlier, guided the ship away from the station as chaos erupted behind them. "Do you think it will work?" he asked. "Thousands of years of Council rule brought down by information? The most powerful weapon has always been truth," Naomi replied, watching as the first reports of uprisings began to appear on her tactical display. The Council maintained control through ignorance and division. "We're giving people knowledge and unity." General Idrissa Okafor stood motionless in Earth's primary quantum communication center, a vast underground complex beneath the East African Federation. The circular chamber was bathed in the blue glow of holographic displays, showing real-time updates from across the galaxy. Around him, operators at numerous stations monitored incoming data, their faces illuminated by their screens as they coordinated humanity's response to the Council's assault. "Status on the Council fleet?" Idrissa asked, his deep voice carrying across the command center. "The second wave has arrived, sir," replied his tactical officer, Major Diana Reyes. She gestured toward the largest display, 322 capital ships now reinforcing the disabled first wave. "Our orbital defenses are holding, but they're deploying new countermeasures against our quantum mesh technology." Idrissa studied the display with calm intensity. The massive Council Armada hung in Earth's orbit like a swarm of predators. Unlike the first wave, which had approached in tight formation, these ships maintained distance from each other, having learned from their predecessor's mistake. Status on the Orpheus Protocol? He asked his chief science officer, Dr. Wei Zhang. Ready for deployment, sir, Wei responded, looking up from his workstation. His expression showed professional concern. Though I must again register my ethical concerns about— Noted, Doctor. Idrissa cut him off with a raised hand. But the Council has left us no choice. Their second wave carries planet-killer weapons. We've detected quantum disruptors and atmospheric ignition devices. The tactical display zoomed in to highlight several massive vessels at the rear of the Council formation. Unlike the sleek battlecruisers that made up the bulk of their fleet, these were bulky, ominous ships with visible weapon systems extending from their hulls. They still don't understand what they're fighting, Idrissa mused, studying the Council deployment. They think this is about territory or resources or military dominance. His aide approached with a tablet displaying an urgent message. Sir, we've received communication from High Counselor Vexitera. They're demanding unconditional surrender or they'll target civilian populations. Idrissa's expression hardened. Put her through. The central holographic display changed and the crystalline form of Vexitara materialized in the communication hub. Her faceted body gleamed with internal light that shifted between blue and red, a sign of emotional intensity among her species. General Okafor, she began, her translated voice carrying artificial pleasantness that failed to mask her contempt. Your initial trickery was impressive, but ultimately futile. You now face the full might of a civilization that has ruled the stars for 50,000 years. And yet you've abandoned your own worlds to focus on us, Idrissa observed calmly, clasping his hands behind his back. How many have already declared independence while you've been distracted? Uncertainty flickered across Vextara's crystalline features, manifesting as a momentary disruption in her light patterns. Temporary insurrections, nothing more. Once humanity is dealt with, order will be restored. This conflict was never about defeating your military counselor, Idrissa said. It was about showing the galaxy the truth of your rule, a truth your subject species have suspected for centuries. You spread lies and discord, Vextara responded, her form shimmering with rage. The Council brings stability and progress to primitive species. Without our guidance, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Guidance? Idrissa raised an eyebrow. Is that what you call classifying entire civilizations as labor resources? Restricting technology to keep species dependent on Council authority? Extracting resources from worlds while giving little in return? You will be exterminated, human. Vexitara's voice had lost its artificial pleasantness. Your species will be erased from history, and your worlds redistributed to loyal Council races. One last chance for a diplomatic solution, Idrissa offered, his tone softening slightly. Withdraw your forces, recognize the sovereignty of all sentient species, and help us build a true galactic community based on cooperation rather than control. Never, Vexitara spat. Prepare for extinction. The transmission ended abruptly. Idrissa turned to Wei. Begin Orpheus Protocol. Throughout Council space, hidden human quantum entanglement nodes simultaneously activated. These devices, smuggled onto key worlds over decades of seemingly innocent trade and diplomatic exchanges, had remained dormant until this moment. They didn't target ships or weapons or even strategic installations. They targeted the specialized faster-than-light communication network that formed the backbone of Council authority. In an instant, the entire FTL communication grid collapsed. Council ships could no longer coordinate. Administrative centers couldn't control their subject worlds. The vast, complex machine of Council governance simply stopped functioning. On the command ship of the Council Armada, the massive dreadnought Celestial Authority, Admiral Zorvale watched in horror as his tactical displays went dark one after another. Around him, his command crew frantically worked to restore connections, their movements becoming increasingly desperate. What's happening? He demanded, pounding a scaled fist against his command chair. His technical officer, a member of a species specially bred for computational abilities, stared at useless controls with all four of his eyes widened in disbelief. They've collapsed the quantum substrate. The entire communication network is. It's impossible. Conventional communications, Zorval ordered. Tight beam transmissions to nearby ships. Sir? The technical officer hesitated. Without the quantum network, each message will take minutes to reach even our closest vessels. And we have no way to coordinate the entire fleet. The tactical advantage, I know what it means, Zorval cut him off. Do it anyway. Without central coordination, the massive council fleet became nothing more than a collection of individual ships, each captain suddenly forced to make decisions without orders from command. Formations began to drift apart as some vessels maintained position, while others moved to what their captains considered more advantageous positions. Back on Earth, Idrissa watched as the council formation began to fragment. Send the message to all council ships, he ordered, on all conventional frequencies. Throughout the approaching armada, captains received the same transmission. Your government has fallen. Your homeworlds have declared independence. Your communication network is permanently disabled. We offer safe passage home to any ship that withdraws now. The message was accompanied by footage from dozens of council worlds where revolutions were already underway. Palace guards laying down weapons, administrative centers occupied by former subject species, statues of council elders toppled in central plazas. On the tactical display, Idrissa watched as ships began breaking formation. First a few, then dozens, especially those crewed by species that had suffered most under council rule. Dr. Wei approached, his tablet displaying real-time analysis of the council fleet's disintegration. The Orpheus protocol worked better than we anticipated. Their entire infrastructure was dependent on that network. They ruled through information control, Idrissa explained, his eyes never leaving the display. For thousands of years, they controlled what each species knew about the others, about technology, about history itself. We simply removed their ability to control the narrative. As the council fleet continued to disintegrate, reports flowed in from across the galaxy. The monolithic power that had dominated thousands of species for millennia was collapsing in a matter of hours. Not through destruction, but through disconnection. What about the ships still advancing? Major Reyes asked, highlighting a group of approximately 100 council vessels still moving toward Earth's orbital defense perimeter. Those would be crews from the founding council species, Idrissa noted, the ones with the most to lose from the council's fall. He studied their approach for a moment, then nodded decisively. Activate the defense grid, non-lethal protocols only. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. Throughout Earth orbit, automated defense platforms powered up. Unlike traditional weapons, these fired concentrated electromagnetic pulses designed to overload ship systems without causing physical damage. One by one, the remaining council ships went dark, drifting harmlessly in space. In the communication center, a spontaneous cheer erupted as the last vessel was neutralized. Idrissa raised a hand for silence. This isn't victory, he stated firmly. It's transition. The hard work begins now. He turned to his communications officer. Contact all Earth ships and allied forces. Begin rescue operations for disabled council vessels. Every crew member is to be treated with respect and provided appropriate accommodations. Even the ones who were ready to deploy planet killers against us? Major Reyes asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. Especially them, Idrissa replied. They need to understand that humanity doesn't seek vengeance or dominance. We want something the Council never truly offered: genuine coexistence. As the rescue operations began, Idrissa retreated to his private office adjacent to the command center. There, on a simple desk, sat photographs of his family, parents who had survived the Council's first attempt to contain humanity 30 years earlier, children who had grown up preparing for this day. 6 months after the collapse of the Galactic Council's communication network, Harmony Station orbited Earth like a shining beacon. The newly constructed diplomatic installation, built with technology from dozens of formerly subjugated species, dwarfed any previous human structure in space. Its design incorporated elements from various galactic architectural traditions: crystalline spires reminiscent of Vextaran temples, flowing organic curves from Medusan design philosophy, and the practical functionality of human engineering. Within the vast central assembly hall, representatives from over 200 formerly subjugated species gathered. The space hummed with translation devices as beings from across the galaxy communicated in their native languages. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others required specialized environmental suits, while many walked on various configurations of limbs across the polished floor. Ambassador Eleanor Reeves, now serving as Earth's Secretary of Interstellar Relations, took her place at the central podium. Her simple white uniform contrasted with the elaborate ceremonial dress of many alien representatives. Beside her stood Thelvar, whose Medusan resistance movement had been crucial in the liberation, and Kirna, a former council enforcer who had defected when she learned the truth about the regime she served. "We gather here not as conquerors or the conquered," Eleanor began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, "but as equals. The Council's fall was not humanity's victory alone, but a collective achievement of all who yearned for true self-determination." Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing images from across the transformed galaxy. Former Council worlds flourishing with newly unleashed innovation, trade routes restructured for fairness rather than exploitation, healing beginning after millennia of enforced stagnation. The old Council claimed that hierarchy and control were necessary for stability. Eleanor continued, gesturing toward the displays. They feared change, diversity, and the unpredictable nature of growth. Their vision of galactic civilization was a carefully pruned garden. What we propose instead is a forest, wild, diverse, sometimes chaotic, but infinitely more resilient and magnificent. In a private chamber nearby, Director Marcus Wright met with former High Counselor Vextara. The crystalline being's once brilliant form had dimmed considerably since losing her position of power. The internal lights that once shifted confidently between blue and purple now flickered weakly in pale yellows. "You could have destroyed us completely," Vextara observed, her translated voice lacking its former arrogance. "Your Orpheus protocol could have been weaponized to shut down our life support systems, not just our communications." "That was never our intention," Marcus explained, standing comfortably across from the being who had once advocated for humanity's extinction. "Humanity has seen enough of its own history to know that ruling through fear or destruction only creates cycles of revenge. We wanted to end the cycle, not perpetuate it." "What happens to those of us who led the Council?" she asked, a faint tremble in her crystalline structure. "There are calls for punishment from many worlds we once administered." "That will be decided democratically, by the very people you once ruled," Marcus replied. "But the treaty being signed today ensures fair treatment for all. Justice, not vengeance." Back in the assembly hall, Eleanor presented the document that would formalize the new interstellar alliance, the Dawn Treaty. The holographic text floated above the central platform, visible to all, with translations running alongside the original. "This agreement enshrines 3 fundamental principles," she explained, highlighting sections of the document with graceful gestures. "First, the sovereignty of all sentient species. Each civilization has the right to develop according to its own values and traditions, free from external control." Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. "Second, the free exchange of knowledge with appropriate ethical safeguards. No more suppressed technologies or restricted information. Together we will establish ethical guidelines for advancement, but they will be guidelines created collectively, not imposed from above." The representatives from formerly primitive worlds nodded emphatically. "Third, mutual defense against existential threats. The galaxy contains dangers that transcend individual worlds. Together we will face those threats as allies, not as rulers and subjects." Representatives came forward one by one to add their signatures or equivalents to the treaty. Former enemies sat side by side, working toward common goals. Species that had been deliberately kept apart by Council policy discovered shared values and complementary strengths. Admiral Tomas Rivera, now part of the Transitional Security Council, conferred with his alien counterparts about dismantling the remaining Council military installations. His uniform bore new insignia representing the Interim Defense Alliance rather than Earth alone. "The irony," commented his draconian colleague, Keshivor, whose scaled hide bore ceremonial markings of his people's liberation, "is that the Council truly believed they were preserving civilization. They never understood that true civilization cannot exist without freedom." "Power justifies itself," Tomas replied. "For 50,000 years they convinced themselves they were necessary guardians. The hardest thing for anyone to accept is that the world might be better without their control." As the signing ceremony concluded, Eleanor met privately with her closest advisors in an observation lounge overlooking Earth. Through the massive windows, they could see the blue-green planet rotating serenely against the backdrop of space, seemingly unchanged by the galactic revolution it had catalyzed. "We've achieved more than we hoped," she said, accepting a cup of tea from an aide. "But challenges remain. Some former Council species still resist the new order. And there are regions beyond former Council space we know nothing about. The difference," Naomi Khatri pointed out, "is that we now face those challenges together, with the combined knowledge and creativity of hundreds of civilizations." General Okafor joined them, looking more relaxed than he had in years. "Our intelligence suggests that the remaining Council loyalists are gathering in the Cygnus sector. They'll likely attempt to restore some version of the old system." "Let them try," Eleanor said. "But without information control and forced technological suppression, they can't recreate what existed before. The foundation is gone." From the observation deck, they looked out at the vastness of space, no longer a realm of oppression and control, but a frontier of possibilities. Ships from dozens of worlds moved in coordinated patterns around Harmony Station, their designs as varied as the species that created them. "I've been thinking about history," Naomi said thoughtfully, "about how this will be remembered centuries from now." "What conclusion did you reach?" Eleanor asked. "That the Council's greatest mistake wasn't attacking Earth, it was believing that stability required stagnation. They never understood that true resilience comes from diversity and adaptation, not rigid control." General Okafor nodded in agreement. "When the Galactic Council declared war, they expected to give us Oblivion. Instead, we gave Oblivion to their system of domination while preserving life and hope. And that," Eleanor said, "watching the representatives of the new alliance departing with optimism rather than fear, is the true measure of civilization." As the final details of the Dawn Treaty were formalized in the main hall, a small delegation approached the human representatives, led by a young Vextaran, whose crystalline body shone with vibrant colors unlike the muted tones of the former Council members. They carried an ancient artifact, a star map created before the Council's formation. "This was hidden in our ancestral archives," the young Vextaran explained. "It shows regions beyond what the Council explored, star systems they deliberately avoided." Eleanor studied the map with interest. "Why would they avoid exploration?" "That contradicts everything we know about their early history. According to our oldest records, they encountered something in this region." The Vextaran indicated a cluster of stars at the edge of the map, something that frightened even our ancestors at the height of their power. Naomi and Idrissa exchanged glances. "Perhaps that explains their obsession with control," Naomi suggested. "If they faced something they couldn't defeat, they might have turned to controlling what they could, other species, technology, information." Eleanor carefully accepted the ancient map. "Then our new alliance may face challenges the Council never prepared us for. But we'll face them differently," Idrissa stated firmly. "Not through suppression and fear, but through cooperation and shared strength." As news of the Dawn Treaty spread throughout the galaxy, species that had been kept apart for millennia began to connect, share, and build together. The Council's dark age of enforced stagnation gave way to a renaissance of cooperation and discovery.